Jake
Yikes.
Paul, Anderson Silva this Saturday, Showtime, PPV. I'm excited about the main event. This is fun to me. Like, as long as you know what you're getting. Like, Jake Paul, it's a separate lane of boxing. I'm not going to get into the whole what Jake Paul means to the sport nonsense. It's fun. Like, this is a fun fight. I want to see how it plays out. I want to see what's next. I want to see what comes of it. I want to see the show. He already arrived at his fighter workout on a horse. It's fun. Boxing is fun. It's supposed to be fun. Do you still think that the Jake Paul train ends this weekend and he loses to Anderson Silva?
I do. I mean, I've looked more into it. I definitely see how Jake Paul can win the fight. He's a much bigger guy than the guys that Silva has been fighting. Silva, I mean, he fought Chavez Jr., which was a huge upset and one that, honestly, I didn't think that Silva had enough in him to beat him. But looking back at that, Chavez was really a 60-pounder, 68-pounder. They fought at 180. I know Silva's a big guy. He cuts from around over 200 pounds. So, you know, he was the bigger man, not only taller, longer, but also just bigger in size and you know, and the kind of guys that he's been in the ring with. Jake Paul, not so much. Jake Paul's a big dude. He's not as tall, he's not as long, but he's very, very thick. He's heavier. He's coming down. His kid's probably seen 220 at some point in his life. You know, and he's young and he's fresh, and the kid, and he can crack. Take anything away from him, he is what he is, but homeboy can crack. So there's that, and then you got Silva, who's what is he gonna be, 47 by the time they fight? 48?
I think he is 47. Let's not age him any more than he already is. He's 47.
He's 47, right? 47 with a lot of wear and tear and some heavy duty fights in his career. But I still have hope for my man Silva. I think he's savvy enough to avoid the early power. I don't think that Paul is busy enough to take advantage of some of that youth that he has. The guy just doesn't throw a lot of punches.
Oh, I have numbers for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you are the numbers man. But also, Silva is a southpaw. So one of Jake Paul's better punches, you know, his right hand is obviously the punch to look out for, but he throws a lot of jabs when he does actually throw. It's a lot of jabs. He throws that overhand, which is your weapon against the southpaw. But is he going to be able to set it up the way he has with the other guys? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the southpaw length. You got a taller, longer, slicker southpaw. Tough guy to land a right hand on.
How slick is he, though? Because did you see what came out this week? He did an interview back in September. And we know about Silva. He speaks, like, broken English. And he did the interview in English, and he kept saying during the interview, I got knocked out in sparring. Said it multiple times. I got knocked down.
So I read the response to that when he said that he spoke wrong and didn't say it the right way. And I mean, I don't know what that means exactly. I mean, I think he was trying to say that he had hard sparring.
Yep.
And this was apparently back in September. It hasn't been that recent. But, yeah, I mean, listen, he's been knocked out in the past anyway. He's been knocked out in fights.
Exactly.
So there's that. It's the question is, can Paul land? And when he does, can Silva take it? Because if he that's literally the fight, yes or no. And I think if he can, he wins. I think he can. Obviously, Jake Paul wins.
I think Jake Paul can land it. It's an 8-round fight. But regardless if Silva was knocked down or out in sparring, he was knocked out in the cage. He was knocked out in the boxing ring. His first fight, his debut, he took a body shot and he lost. And there's an old adage in boxing: you've been knocked down once or knocked out once, you're probably going to get knocked out again. 47 years old. He is a southpaw, like you said, and the hardest punch to land on a southpaw is a jab. Jake Paul throws a lot of jabs. I think 58% of his thrown punches are jabs. Which is intriguing because people think he can't box. He actually has a pretty decent jab, and obviously that overhand right is his money punch, and that is a punch that you land on southpaws. So I'm interested in that. But going back to the busyness, or the lack of busyness for Jake Paul, and especially what he's seen back, Jake Paul averages about 27 punches a round. That is astronomically low. The cruiserweight average is 50. So he's throwing 20 less punches around, even more than that. So he needs to be busier. On the other flip side of things, Chavez in that last fight Silva in that last fight with Chavez, throwing 50 around. Busy. Can Paul time one of those punches? If Chavez is going to come in throwing punches, doesn't really have the punch-for-punch power as Paul. So I can see Paul maybe timing and a counter shot late. But one thing that really intrigues me numbers-wise, the most punches Jake Paul has ever seen in a round is 36. Anderson Silva threw 134 in the final 2 rounds alone versus Chavez. He's never seen the power. He's never seen the amount of punches, Jake Paul, that Silva is going to be throwing at him. Woodley threw nothing in that punch. Woodley in that last fight. Woodley threw 32 punches around. So I'm interested to see how Paul will deal with a southpaw. He'll deal with volume, and if he can time the volume and land something, and if he does, I think he knocks out Paul. That's my official pick. Is Paul by either a TKO or one of those huge knockouts that's going to suck to watch because we love Silva. But I do think Paul will win.
I got Silva either by decision or late round stoppage.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Late round stoppage.
Yep. I don't see Paul having a good gas tank. Obviously, he doesn't throw a lot of punches. He's got a bigger, longer guy. You said he's never fought somebody who threw so many punches at him. He's never fought somebody who was taller and longer than him the way that Silva is. He's never fought someone who was a southpaw. So he's got a lot of things in front of him, and he's also the highest quality opponent. Again, still not a boxer. Jake Paul is after Saturday night. I still am not going to say that he's ever fought a boxer, but he's fought someone with the most experience to date. But yeah, I just think it's going to be too much. I think they just reached a little too far.
Do you think they'll give a decision to Anderson Silva? Gravy train ended.
Yeah, I mean, if not, I think it could be a really, really ugly black eye for the whole situation. But then they fight again, and then we'll see what happens. And then Paul probably knocks him out.
Yeah, exactly. Pidge in the chat bring up a question that I also wanted to ask you. Is Jake Paul better than Chavez Jr. right now?
More dangerous for sure. Bigger and harder puncher.
Jake Paul is bigger and harder puncher than Chavez. Not Chavez right now, because I think he's in like rehab. But I'm talking about like Chavez, like that we saw like as recent Chavez in the ring. Jake Paul's better than Chavez.
No, the Chavez who we're talking the Chavez who fought Silva. I think that he's more dangerous. I'm not going to say he's necessarily better. I think it's a more dangerous fight for Silva. Obviously, he's got the youth and the momentum, and he's got power, and he's bigger. He is a much bigger person than Chavez Jr. I think it's hard to put that together in your mind. I think the same thing. I look at them, I'm like, oh no, they're about no. He's a 60-pounder. That's a big jump.
Yeah,
we're talking about guys who are 200 plus, and yeah, sure, Chavez has gotten to 200 pounds because he likes to overeat. But size-wise, body-wise, he's not that big. He's a 60-pounder. So, yeah, he's a lot bigger. And size matters, guys. Size matters.
Okay. All right. Chavez came in at 170. Excuse me. Silva came in at 175 versus Chavez for that fight. This fight's at 189. I think that's an advantage for Silva.
Yeah, he was cutting a lot of weight for that fight, too.
I think it's an advantage for Silva to do this fight at 189. Older guy, doesn't have to cut as much weight. Come in nice and healthy.
He was cutting a lot of weight for the Chavez fight. I remember him fight week. He actually canceled some interviews because he had to go make weight. So I think it probably will help the older guy to not have to, and he can be fresh, and he's going to need to be.
Ace wants to know, Chris, would you take on Jake Paul?
No, he's too big. Absolutely not. I mean,
wow.
The guy's, again, we're talking 200 pounds. I'm a 140 pounder. It would be. I can't even picture that in the ring.
I respect the hell out of that saying no, because I think you ask any fighter of your age bracket, not to age you out, but like they're like, yes, Carl Froch says he wants to come out of retirement to fight him. Our friend Sergio Mora has, hinted at wanting to fight him. These older MMA guys are lining up. Nate Diaz will be in attendance at this fight. GSP is on the call. So that's the type of guy you are. Integrity. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get why those guys are saying it. First of all, those guys are all way bigger than me. I don't know what, Carl Froch was a 68er. I mean, he's still in great shape. I've called fights with him before. Carl Froch will, if he can still fight at all, which I'm sure he can, he just mops the floor with that kid. The size. But listen, the guy's 200 pounds. I'm not. It's not a street fight. It's a boxing match. It would look insane to even be in the ring with a guy that big.
We can blow up steaks, burgers. No,
no thanks.
Ace says you can outbox him.
I like the way my body looks.
Ace says you can outbox him. Also, hard times boxing. My high schooler has begun following boxing due to Jake Paul. He is a circus, but he does bring new suburban kids' eyes to boxing. I agree.
I think I think you and I agree in that.
No, 100% agree. You know, I put out a tweet earlier this week. It was a really fun exercise, and I tweeted, without stating your age, which boxer got you into the sport. Over 1,000 replies, and there were some good ones in there, and there were a lot of Jake Pauls. There was a lot of KSIs. People are like, hey, I hate to admit this, but Jake Paul got me into boxing, and now I watch big fights because of that, and that's something I said will happen a lot, and everyone's like, no way, there's no way the fans that watch Jake Paul fights or KSI fights are going to eventually switch over to boxing. It's not true. It's not true. Like, you can see it in this thread.
Yeah, but you know who else brought a lot of fight fans to boxing? Rocky. Rocky's not a real boxer, but he's brought a lot of fans to the sport. Unbelievable, now, honestly, right. Uncountable, unfathomable numbers of people started watching boxing because of Rocky.
As you say I see the thread, and there's a Creed. Someone dropped a Creed picture.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's listen, it's a sideshow, it's a circus, but again, it brings eyes, and it lets people understand. It brings the people into the fold. They see how great the sport is. They see what the guys who are really doing it, the champions. They start looking into the past. Listen, if you have been around boxing and you're not a fan, something's wrong with you, I guess, because it really is the best sport in the world.
Yeah, I was down and out from the Spence stuff, and I put that tweet out there, and it kind of restored my faith in terms of like how beautiful the sport is and like how it's passed down from generation to generation. There was a lot of people in that thread saying, my dad showed me a Sugar Ray Leonard fight. My dad showed me Salvador Sanchez fight. I was at Ali's debut. A bunch of people replied. It was an awesome thread. Who's the fighter that got you into boxing?
Well, my grandfather. It wasn't even a single fighter.
Right.
I didn't really have a choice. I kind of grew up. The first sport I ever remember watching was boxing. So that's I wasn't any one particular fighter, but I think the guy that probably my first memory of hearing about a fighter and then kind of looking into him historically was Alexis Arguello. So I would say I'd probably give it to him. He gets the crown.
Yeah. What's yours, Ronnie?
First boxer, it's probably Mayweather.
Yeah. A lot of Mayweather answers in there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the guy. He was everywhere. He was in he crossed over. He's in WWE. He was like, Mine is Turo Gotti. I went to a lot of his fights as a kid. Like, my dad would take me to Atlantic City. Close second would be Hamed. Being at his fight against Kevin Kelly, 10 years old.
Oh, the Flushing Flash is one of my favorite fights.
Dude, I was 10 years old at that fight at the theater, and Hamed comes in and flips over the top rope. He had he was dancing, and then he could fight, and that fight was awesome. Those are my two. That was a fun exercise, that thread, and it kind of restored my faith a little bit. But yeah, so Paul Silva is probably the bigger fight this weekend. It's on Showtime pay-per-view. I'm riding with Paul by KO. Chris, what's your official pick? Silva
decision.
The Silva decision. I wouldn't actually be that shocked, because if it turns into a fencing match, and like the Woodley fight, the second Woodley fight sucked.
The first one was the split decision.
It
was a close fight, and he had Silva Paul hurt. And the second fight, yes, absolutely sucked until the KO.
And yeah, it did. And so if this turns into something like that, where I don't think Jake Paul's going to magically learn how to throw more than 28 punches around and be fluid in there, he's looking for that one big shot, and Silva presses the action, then maybe we can get it. If Silva fights like, hey, I just want to reach that 8th round and see what happens, then I can see a decision. I can see it going towards that direction. All right, so that's Paul Silva talk.